Hello, welcome to Mike's Best Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Wednesday to you. We are recording this right after the Mets 3-2 victory over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Mets pulling off the victory, taking 2 out of 3 from the Diamondbacks. First home series loss for Diamondbacks since June. Diamondbacks one of the hottest teams in baseball, so huge victory for the Mets. Huge performance from Edwin Diaz in the ninth inning. Bounce back performance from him after blowing the save the night before. Timely home runs from Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso would power the Mets to victory, as well as a go-ahead single from Jose Iglesias in the ninth inning that helped the Mets take the 3-2 lead. So a lot to recap in this game. First, let's start with Edwin Diaz, who is coming off a bad stretch for the Mets. He blew saves against, as I mentioned before, the Diamondbacks in the second game of this series. Bad loss for the Mets. And also had blown a save against the Padres in that series. So these were potentially series-clinching victories the Mets could have gotten over the Padres and Diamondbacks, rivals for the Mets for the wild card spot for one of those final wild card spots. And they were critical losses. Diaz blew them and blew them in the fashion that you would kind of expect with Diaz, which is that when he doesn't have it, he is going to be giving up home runs. And in both occasions, he gave up bad home runs. And we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what we did today, which was he looked miles better. He did not crucially throw his slider. And the slider is generally known as Diaz's best pitch. He has not had great command of it in this season, really, for the most part, with some rare instances in between. He has just not really shown complete control of the slider, whether it's just him struggling to regain his command after the ACL injury, coming back from that. It's not totally clear, but he has been showing shades more of 2019 than 2022. And because of that, he hasn't really been a very consistent option for the Mets in the ninth inning. He has looked, for the most part, much better. It's just been these last two series, unfortunately, they're coming right back to back on each other, that he has looked especially bad. And it has caused his ERA to balloon upwards over 4. He has not been what you would really want from your closer, and particularly your all-star, like highest paid closer baseball, like that level. Yeah, he has not been pitching to that level, unfortunately, and because of that, the Mets, with all their bullpen woes, don't really need another issue, and Diaz has not been just has not been the guy for them, unfortunately. He did look great in this game. He was throwing a lot of fastballs. Didn't look like the Diamondbacks were particularly prepared for it. They were blown away on more than a few of these pitches. And it was a clean inning. He didn't walk anybody. His control, for the most part, was pretty good. And even though he only had the one strikeout, it was a couple of pop flies. This was the sharpest I think we'd seen from him in a while, and he looked very focused. He looked very determined. He didn't seem to be holding that blown save in his mind at all, which was a great sign for him. And it was a great bounce back performance. I really can't say enough about him coming back like that. It was a great job. The Mets scoring in this, not that much. The Mets have flashed a lot of lumber over this West Coast trip. Not really the case in this one, although they did manage 10 base hits. Just had trouble getting those guys in, which has always been a theme for the Mets. It's just leaving a lot of guys on base, getting a lot of base hits, not really so much getting guys back in. And we saw another home run from Alonso. Alonso's homered now in the series twice, I believe. And that should give him a little bit more momentum down the stretch, I'm hoping. Francisco Lindor, there's a considerable case to be made that Lindor deserves to be named NL Player of the Month. He will have certainly a lot of competition with Shohei Ohtani. And the Mets are making their way into this out of the dog days of August finally, and going into September very soon. They're going to finish up their road trip against the Chicago White Sox, and we're excited to see that happen. But the Lindor-Alonso combination is going to be very critical down these last few series as they have to finish down the stretch strong, and they have to finish down the stretch in a way that is going to be difficult. So I've kind of done the math. It's not easy. The schedules for their principal competition, which is the Braves, the Padres, And the Diamondbacks, it's a little bit easier than Mets. Mets' schedule. The Mets had a very easy go of it earlier this year. They've now hit a very dangerous lull where they have not been playing quite as well, and part of it is that they're just playing stronger competition. However, taking 4 out of 7 from the Padres and the Diamondbacks, great job. If they can finish this up strong with what would be very helpful would be a series sweep of the woeful Chicago White Sox. That would be a great way to finish off this road trip before going back home. And there's a very very real possibility that they could sweep the White Sox, who are a very bad team. But the Mets have to stay focused. They have to take those games seriously. They have to win them and win them in decisive fashion. We can't be having blown saves, no situations like that against the worst team in baseball. So if they can finish off this road trip with that series sweep, or at least taking 2 out of 3, I would take 2 out of 3 at the very minimum. But they really should sweep the White Sox. There's no reason why they can't do it. But finishing off this series, this road trip would be in that way would be a great sign for the Mets going forward, because it is going to be difficult. So I mentioned their principal competition, the Braves, Padres, and Diamondbacks are the ones in the way. The Mets' schedule is not particularly easy. A lot of these teams they're going to be playing, the Braves and the Phillies and the Brewers. These are going to be playoff competition. They'll have some easy competition in the middle of there. Also there with the Washington Nationals showing up, and as much as the Braves are in the way, the Braves are not. I would say are incredible competition, even though they are streaking lately. It's important for the Mets to stay focused here and make sure that they can pull off this this last go around, because that series against the Braves, I'm just thinking more and more is going to be the deciding one. And they're playing 3 in Atlanta. It's their final stretch, and they're going to finish up this season with 10 games on the road. Another long road trip. They haven't traditionally done very well on these road trips, so they're off to a good start in this one. But that final season road trip is going to be really difficult, and the hope is that they can potentially take the series over the Braves, and that might be enough to push them over the stretch. With the final series coming against the Milwaukee Brewers, and they have to play 3 against them on the road as well. So that series against the Braves, I think more and more is just going to be the potential season decider as to whether or not the Mets can make one of those final wildcard spots, because it feels like they're going to be neck and neck with Atlanta down that stretch. Atlanta's schedule isn't going to be super easy, and these two teams are separated by just a matter of a few games here. So it's just a matter of who can take the most games really at this point, which was a no-brainer right there. Great analysis by Mike. But it's really a decider of which teams can actually pick up these wins. That's why I'm saying that the 3-game series that the Mets are about to play against the Chicago White Sox is going to be critical. They need to take these wins and make sure that series does go in the Mets' favor, because if they are in a situation where they have to play Atlanta with potentially their season on the line, it's a lot to ask. A Met team that has not had hasn't had a ton of success. This is not a unstoppable team. There are certainly weak spots in the bullpen and starting rotation, and even in some cases the lineup. Even though I think the lineup is their strongest asset, but this is a team that can be had. They can have problems befall them, as we've seen during this road trip, where they're with the guy who should be their principal star, Edwin Diaz, in the bullpen, has been the one actually blowing these games, and that's not what you want. You do not need Diaz doing that. So it was a great bounce back performance. Let's see if he can keep that same level of intensity and momentum going for the Mets over this final month plus of the season. Also want to shout out David Peterson. Another great start from him. Peterson crucially went 7 innings in this game. Another really important fact is the fact that the Mets bullpen has not been really good. And part of that you have to blame a little bit on the starting rotation, just not going very deep in these games. And that's the people who are mostly to blame for that are guys like Quintana and also Peterson. Peterson has not been going to games very much until lately. Peterson has been controlling his pitch count much far better. He's being He's attacking the strike zone more. His off speed stuff is gaining more. Getting people to fall for it a little bit more, and you're just seeing him pitch to a level that we just haven't seen much from him over the course of his Met career. It's been sort of up and down with Peterson, but he's on a terrific tear as of late, and this was 7 innings, 7 hits, which was not great, but only allowed 2 runs, only walked 2 batters, big there, and struck out 4, ultimately finishing with 88 pitches. He probably could have gone into the 8th inning if they really needed him to, but the Mets opted to go with Jose Butto in the 8th inning. Butto pitched a clean 8th and let it off to Diaz in the 9th, and we we got to see a big. It was a big performance. I mentioned Diaz before. It was actually 2 strikeouts, not one. I thought it was a foul ball strikeout. I forgot to mention that. But so 2 strikeouts for Diaz in that 9th inning. But Peterson. Another big story about this one, even though probably the most of the attention is now being focused on Diaz, but Peterson, it should not be lost in the fact that Peterson was, once again, very strong for them. He lowered his ERA down to 2.83. He has been, along with Sean Bonilla, the top Met pitchers down the stretch, which has been big. Severino and Quintana have been fine. I don't really know what is yet the case for Paul Blackburn. He's on the 15-day IL as of right now. The prognosis is not great. They're not sure if Blackburn will be able to return before the end of the year. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, they're relying on guys like Peterson and Manaea to come through. So we know that Tyler McGill will replace Paul Blackburn in the rotation. It seems as though he's going to be pitching tomorrow for the team, as far as right now for the plan. So they will have Tyler McGill on the mound against the Chicago White Sox tomorrow. So that's something, I guess, to look forward to. I've made my feelings about McGill pretty clear over the course of this podcast, which is that there are times he can look really good. There are other times he looks just absolutely terrible. And, it wasn't that long ago that I felt very similarly about David Peterson. Peterson has just, there's been a lot of up and down performances from Peterson. So, there's a chance that McGill can kind of turn around to the way that Peterson has. I'm just not totally confident, and until I see him pitch, which thankfully is going to be playing the White Sox, we will see a version of McGill probably that was going to be pitching a little bit better, that we're hoping. But it remains to be seen how well he's going to perform for the Mets down this stretch, because they were expecting to have Paul Blackburn. As I said, they're not totally sure when Blackburn is going to be able to return. So it seems more and more like they're going to have to rely on McGill down the stretch. So he is going to be, unfortunately, a factor that they have to play into this, which is that even though I would not call Blackburn a crucial piece of this puzzle for them, they did make him a principal trade asset down the line. They targeted him to acquire, and they were expecting to have that veteran starter down the stretch. Even though I think McGill and Blackburn is probably in the league roughly the same amount of time, but. It's interesting to see how this is all going to play out over these last few weeks of the season, where you have, unfortunately, another unknown element, or not really unknown, but sort of a random element in the case of McGill, where there's just you're rolling the dice with him every time he goes out on the mound, where you're not totally sure if he's going to be giving you 6 strong innings or 3 absolutely terrible innings. There's really just no way of telling how he's going to perform, and unfortunately, because of that, you can't really rely on him as a consistent starter. There was probably a chance that the Mets could have used him in the bullpen and just gone with Jose Butto in the rotation instead. But Butto is just too useful in that 8th inning role, and they just don't have a lot of useful pieces at this moment, particularly with the loss, once again, of Daniel Nunez. And Nunez, as a rookie, has been incredible for the Mets, but with what is apparently forearm tightness. I believe that's they were saying for Nunez's issue right now. It's now another situation where he's going to be on the IL, and this guy just can't stay healthy, unfortunately, which is a big problem. So just 15 days is, as of right now, does not seem to be a crucial issue for him, and they're hoping that they can get him back healthy-ish for those last couple of weeks of the season. But it's definitely going to hurt them if they can get him back at least for that final stretch, or at least that final road game stretch of the season. Having Nunez in that bullpen would be big, and we are not totally sure what to do yet about that rotation. So if I was going to make a guess based off of where the Mets are right now, I'd say this is a team that probably can win 87 games. Um, the schedule looks pretty favorable for the most part, but they are, as I said, about to go off to a really tough stretch where they are going to be playing. Come back home. They play 6 against the Red Sox and Reds. Those are both winnable series. I think the Mets could probably take four out of 6 in those series at the minimum. 3 on the road against the Toronto Blue Jays. Blue Jays are in last place in the East. They've kind of given up on that season, and we're hoping at that point that the Blue Jays are just kind of they're probably trying to play spoiler a little bit, but in the case of the Blue Jays, they're probably hoping to showcase their young players a little bit more than their veterans. So there's a chance the Mets may be able to take 2 out of 3 from the Blue Jays there as well. Then you have to go on the road and play the Phillies, and the Phillies have not played great over these last few weeks. To the point that their division lead is pretty much all has fallen away. The Braves are just 5 back from the Phillies, and if you're a Phillies fan right now, you're like, I can't believe this team is just kind of collapsed and fallen apart like the way they have. But it's kind of the problem when this team is just not really hitting for the most part, and their pitching hasn't been very consistent. And a team like the Braves, who have not been good this season. I would say the Braves have been a huge disappointment. Of all the teams that have been playing this year, I think they are probably the biggest disappointment. But injuries have played a part there as well, and because of this, the Phillies lead now of the Braves is only 5 games. Over the Mets is only 8.5 games. I mean, this is pretty insane. I mean, like it seemed like they had that division wrapped up with a bow earlier this year, and now everything just kind of collapsing and crumbling on them, and has led to we now think there's a chance that I do think the Phillies still take that division, but you're on the road against the Phillies. It's not out of the question the Mets could take 1, maybe even 2 games in that series, but let's say they only take 1 out of 3 from the Phillies in that go. You're still in pretty good shape. Because you go back home and you're going to play the Nationals. Good. You play 4 against the Phillies, and that's when the road trip is. That's when the homestand ends, because then you have to play 6 on the road against the Braves and the Brewers. I think I might have said 10 on the road earlier in this thing. I think I mistook that as a road trip for the Phillies because I was looking at the Phillies schedule before. But it's 4 at home to finish up the homestand. This is the final homestand for the Mets, and 4 at home against the Phillies. There's a chance. I mean, let's say they split that series against the Phillies, and then you go play 3 on the road and against the Braves and Brewers. Let's say the Mets probably are in the realm of 84 to 85 victories at that point. You can take maybe 1 from the Braves, but I think the Braves just have too much of a lead now at this point that they can actually hold on to it, and the Braves just have to play basically 500 ball from this point on, because I don't think the Mets can really take any of these series. Like they need like a long, consistent winning streak, and the problem is that there's this road trip stretch where they have to play 6 on the road right at the end of the year is going to be a problem. Their opponents, they'll have like easier opponents, but the Red Sox are not terrible. Nor the Reds. Both those teams are hovering around 500, and then the Blue Jays are, I guess, like 500, 500. But then you have the Phillies and the Nationals. Nationals are, also well under 500, so there's a good chance there. But the Phillies are still somewhat dangerous. I mean, I would say they've been sufficiently declawed at this point that I wouldn't view them as major contenders. But there's a chance that the Phillies could take those games against the Mets. there is no guarantee really right now. And at this point in the season, the Mets really need consistent wins. Hasn't been a ton of consistency over the course of this month, and part of that has just been bullpen blown saves, a lot of issues there. Starters not pitching particularly well. The offense at times just kind of coming unglued and falling apart, and not coming up with runners in scoring position has been a big issue there. So I don't want to end this episode on feeling so doom and gloomy, but they are running out of time. They've run out of the situations where they have like very favorable series matchups going forward, and they'll have a few down the stretch, but not really enough that I would consider the Mets in a great position, and they need to come through in these bigger situations. So we thankfully have an easy opponent coming up against the Chicago White Sox. I'm hoping the Mets can take three from the White Sox, but the focus now is on how exactly this bullpen can perform down the stretch, how well the starting rotation can perform down the stretch with Paul Blackburn out, and with the lineup performing as it has been, is a good sign. We came through in fine fashion today, but again, only 3 runs. But it was a big series win. When we shouldn't lose sight of that with our focus on the future. Focus on the present should be that it was a huge series win. As I mentioned before, the Diamondbacks do not lose at home very often. Has not been the case since June that they've lost a series, as I mentioned before. So this is it was a huge win. It was for not just Diaz but also for the Mets. Keeps their playoff hopes alive and in check, and there's a chance that they can potentially drive forward with this momentum and take that into the series against the Chicago White Sox. So great things there. Do want to mention if you're watching this on YouTube, please check it out. I've added a special intro into this that I created myself, so please check that out along with my podcast theme. I hope people enjoy that, and I hope everyone's enjoying also my new microphone that I just got. And this has been a very this is a I don't know if professional style microphone, but I really like this microphone a lot, with mute buttons and microphone volume changes that I can add on if I need to. So I'm really enjoying it. Hope everyone can hear the volume. It should be much better than the last episode I recorded. I do apologize for the problems with the audio in the last episode. So I'm hoping everyone can hear this one really nicely. I'm going to be listening to it in post-production after I finish recording, and tweaking it as I see fit. But I'm enjoying this. Trying to professionalize this podcast and make it a little bit different. Try to change it up so that people can enjoy it, not just the audio but also the video with the intro quality. So hope everyone enjoys that. Have a great night. Let's go Mets.
Thank you for listening to the Mike's Mets podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike's Mets Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go Mets.